Then let's move on to the Haas team. Ollie Bearman, I mean, is this just not a fantastic young man? What a star in the making. Not getting enough kudos, I think, because there are other drivers around him who are finishing higher. But Ocon has always been very, very competitive, very, very consistent. But Ollie Bearman is just making Ocon look really, really, I won't say average, but like I'm just so chuffed with Ollie Bearman, the way that he's driving. And long may it continue. And I hope Haas just progress and don't have 4 or 5 races that they right up there and then all of a sudden plateau out. So I'm hoping that their development curve is as strong as all of the other teams relative, so that Haas actually can be up there, because they have two terrific drivers in their stable.
I mean, Ayo Komatsu said that one of the things at the end of the season was the fact that Ocon needed to step up and match Beerman. And for someone to say that, who's your team principal, knowing how long you've been in Formula One in comparison to someone like Ollie, says a lot about his talent. And I think that Ocon definitely has a target on his back because Jack Doohan is still waiting in the wings at Haas as their reserve driver. And he's been doing a lot of simulation work as well. But I think that, yes, he had the incident yesterday with Colapinto. He did take full responsibility for that. Good on him for doing that. But I think Ollie Bearman is just phenomenal. Also, one of those guys, I think he's going to have a very bright future. We don't doubt that they are grooming him quite well for that Ferrari seat in a couple of years' time. Rightfully so, given the performance he has now. Imagine putting him in that Ferrari right now. I feel like it will be so much fun to see either him team up with Hamilton or with Leclerc, because I really do think that he's got the maturity to be able to really compete with the top guns.
3 more teams. McLaren disaster yesterday. I mean, poor Oscar Piastri's had 2 races, hasn't completed 1 lap. Lando Norris finished fifth in the first Grand Prix. And this is where I want to bring in the Mercedes engine in the debate, because there's also been a lot of murmurings, even when it came to preseason testing, that McLaren didn't believe that Mercedes were giving them all of the information or all of the tools for what was required. This can happen. Of course, let's just remember that McLaren won the World Championship last year as a works team, beating Mercedes as the manufacturer team. Nobody wants to see that. Mercedes don't want that. McLaren, of course, love it. Now all of a sudden there's some smallish accusations saying, well, do we actually have the correct software, etc., etc. But earlier on, you brought up Alpine. Now all of a sudden, Alpine have got the straight line speed. So you're going, well, clearly McLaren must have that straight line speed. Maybe the package is just not 100%. So, let's push all of the murmurings aside. McLaren have got a bit of an uphill battle, even in race condition. They're not as quick as Ferrari. Nobody's as quick as Mercedes. And, I think Red Bull, once they sort of figure out 1 or 2 of their problems, are definitely going to be giving McLaren a tremendous headache. But at the moment, McLaren, sure, not performing like world champions, unfortunately.
No, and that's so heartbreaking for me because I think, as any McLaren fan and even a motorsport fan in general, you don't want to see the reigning champions come in and not even finish in the top three. It's questionable. And I think a lot of what has been happening has been the murmuring behind the scenes because, again, it's like bickering, constant bickering. You didn't give us this, but you said you were going to do that. That's literally, I feel like that should be the reality TV show that we actually want to see. We want to see the inside of what's happening behind closed doors. But I think particularly with McLaren, they've been quite open and transparent about their struggles, as have Lando, as is Oscar. The crazy thing is, a lot of the time they can't identify those problems immediately. There's a waiting process where it's like, well, let's first see if this works, and then that, and then that. I found that they've taken quite long to be able to figure out what has been the issues. So it's been interesting to watch that unfold compared to the team that we knew for the last 2 years who were at the forefront of the sport. So my heart breaks for Oscar Piastri, because for him to not have done a single lap, he doesn't know what it's like to compete in these cars. All he knows is how to watch the race like you and I do every Sunday. That's all he knows at the moment. And I think also with Lando as well, I think maybe it's a little bit discouraging when you see the people that you were competing against for the title last year and those who were far behind you are doing so well. it's one of those factors where you're like, okay, cool. So at what point do we turn this around? That's why I'm quite grateful for that month break that they all have, because in that time to be able to develop something for Miami, which is a Grand Prix that Lando has won before, I think it'll be quite nice to see if they can come up with something a bit more succinct and a bit more um competitive so that they can at least be in the top 6.
Yeah, and just as a slight reminder, even though there is this month gap because Bahrain and Saudi Arabia aren't there, it's not as though the teams can actually just go out there and splash money. They all are restricted. McLaren, for example, only have X amount of wind tunnel test time because they are the world champions. So it's not as though McLaren all of a sudden can just sit there and say, okay, well, let's just bomb another $50 million into development. They are going to have some very, very clever engineers and just like super clever people working to try and figure out what these issues are. Leclerc versus Hamilton, just divine. This is what we've been wanting to see, the two of them really fighting against each other. Terrific battle yesterday, and it was wonderful to see Charles Leclerc come on and saying, man, that was a lot of fun, because Leclerc sometimes can be like, oh, he can be a little bit whingy, but I love him to pieces. But it was a magic race for the two of them. The safety car probably the safety car intervention highlighted the fact that the gap between Mercedes and everybody else is actually a lot larger than what we think. Had there not been a safety car, it probably would have been about 40 seconds. So there's a huge gap. But it's great to see that Ferrari do seem to have a reliable package, and a package now that they just need to learn how to work a little bit better, and of course just find a little bit more pace that they can start challenging with Mercedes. But it's the first time in a long time, since maybe 2023, 2024, that Ferrari actually seem to have something that is workable.
Absolutely. And I think also with Leclerc and with Lewis, there's something so interesting about their dynamic on track, where I feel like there's so much respect, because I think Charles still has that perspective of it's Lewis Hamilton, this is a 7-time world champion, but at the same time, both of them are still fighting for honors. They're fighting for who's the number one driver at Ferrari, and they're both incredible. Absolute superstars in their own right, in different ways. And I think that with where they are now, they've got such a good package to be able to compete. I always find it so interesting when I see them battling with Mercedes, because there's always that touch and go. Who's going to go first? Who's going to, like, it always just feels like we're doing this continuously, which is a great thing. It's a great thing. And I feel like if they can just tweak a little bit of their car to match the Mercedes, or Mercedes can, bring their innovation a bit lower, I think it would honestly just be a lot more interesting to see the battle between them. Because as it's playing out right now, I don't necessarily think that the top 4 is going to change dramatically from now to Japan. I think even in this little break, I think we're mostly going to stay the same. And especially because Suzuka is such a technical circuit, I'm curious to see who's going to come out on top there. Because if I look at all of them, I mean, Leclerc is just phenomenal in technical tracks. But I also just think that someone like George Russell, who we're going to get into in just a bit, I just think that he has just unlocked a different channel in his mind, and he's really just put on his world championship mindset.
Okay, before we get on to George Russell, Kimi Antonelli has got to thank Ferrari yesterday, because they did a tremendous job in holding up George somewhere along the line. I don't know if George would have caught him, but it would have been very, very tight. But first Italian in 20 years, such a likable young man, incredibly fast. A 1-2 for Mercedes at both of the Grand Prix, George and Kimi, and now Kimi and George. It's tremendous for Antonelli to get his first win, probably a lot earlier than I thought it would come this season. But looking at the strength of the Mercedes, Antonelli did everything right, got the pole position, and even though he lost the places, managed to get them back, and was lucky that George got a little bit stuck behind. But superb drive from Antonelli yesterday, and just great to see a new winner in Formula One as well.
Yeah, and I think one of my favorite moments with Kimi Antonelli is knowing that at his young age, at 19 years old, for him to be able to convert his very first pole position as the youngest person to have ever done that on Saturday afternoon, to go into Sunday's race and have, I want to say, a bit of a peaceful race, besides that little snap at the end where we all were like, please don't crash.
Don't do
I literally think, I literally for me, it was so heartwarming. I think everyone felt like this, where you felt like this is your family member who's just done the greatest thing known to man. And he's so humble in his approach. I think you can't help but not love this guy. And I think with George as well, like there was so much humility in the fact that it's almost like you're watching your teammate rise to the occasion, because George has always had the tools that he needed to do it. Now that he's got the machinery to be able to do it, it's almost like everything has just increased by 1,000%. So I think with Mercedes as well, they know they've got two very capable drivers who are able to handle this level of machinery. And I'm so excited to see how they're going to fare for the rest of the season, because I actually, they asked Kimi's dad, do you think he can be up for the World Championship title this year? And his dad said, realistically, yes, the car is fast, but George, it's hard to stop him. And it's very similar to what you said, Sash, where yes, the Ferraris held George up, but I don't think that he would have caught Kimi in this particular case. But with every race for the rest of the season, we are going to see a bit of a type of war between the two of them.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be a Lando and Oscar situation. I'll put that out there. I don't think it's going to be that close. Maybe Kimi will prove us all wrong. But I think that with how things are faring right now, everything just seems to be favored towards George winning and being the favorite more than Kimi. It's just kind of Kimi's just getting a glimpse of it. But he might just surprise us and become one of the youngest champions ever. So we never know.
Yeah, and brings us to George. George has got the experience. He's raced with everybody. He's won everything that he's done. He is super, super fast. Some people like him, some people don't like him, but I tell you, he's a super, super racing driver. The thing with Antonelli is maybe this is the step that he's needed to sit there and say, you know what, I actually can win. And I'll never, ever forget Mika Hakkinen winning his first ever Grand Prix. And all of a sudden, he just exploded. And all of it, and then won 2 titles back to back. So a guy like Antonelli all of a sudden knows that he can do it. He knows that George is super, super fast, but George also knows that Kimi Antonelli is super, super fast, and he found that out in the qualifying as well. So, it bodes for, let's put all of the power unit and Mario Brothers and freaking mushrooms and all of that aside, and just sit there and say, you know what, let's just see these guys out in the track and actually fight for a world title.